Okay. And if you haven't, I'm going to post the link in the chat for attendance for everyone that goes to UCLA Dental School. This is for your selective credits. Okay. All right. So today is our lesson 2. This is overview of all 5 lessons that we'll be teaching this quarter. But today we're going to do greeting patients, introducing yourself, and specific topics we'll go over are describing different things using adjectives and verbs, some basic conversational phrases, different conversations you'll have when calling your patient, such as payment, directions, and places, and phrases. And then we'll have a couple more complex phone call samples that if we have time, we'll go through a few examples with you, but they're mostly for your reference. Okay, so describing things with adjectives and verbs. So if you remember last week, we talked about the articles, which is el, la, los, las, kind of like the and the a, and how they come before a noun in Spanish. And since every noun in Spanish has a gender and has a possibility of being singular or plural, the article also needs to match that. It's the same thing with adjectives. Adjectives, unlike English and Spanish, they come after the noun they're describing. But just like the articles, they need to agree with the noun's plurality, if it's singular or plural, or what the noun's gender is. So in English, we'd say clean tooth, but in Spanish, we'd say tooth clean because the adjective comes after. So if the noun is plural, so the adjective must become plural. You simply do this by adding an S if the adjective ends with a vowel, or an ES if it ends with a consonant. And if the noun you're trying to describe is feminine or masculine, then you must change your adjective to match it. And as a reminder, we have the table on the right telling you the general rules for noun endings. You know a noun is feminine if it ends in a, yon, and de or d. And you know it's masculine if it ends in o, ma, or e. It's a little bit simpler with adjectives, I would say. Many adjectives end in o, and they can easily be changed to a for feminine nouns. And there's a lot of other adjective endings. A lot of them end in consonants. And in those cases, most of the time they don't need to have their gender changed. So you only really need to worry about adjectives that end in o, changing them to a to make them feminine. And then we have a couple examples. So if you have a plural masculine noun like dientes, diente is a masculine noun, el diente. Dientes, los dientes is plural. And you want to describe it as clean. Clean is limpio in Spanish. Now you just need to make it plural because they're both masculine already. So you say dientes limpios or tengo dientes limpios. I have clean teeth. And that's how you adjust your adjective to match your noun. Now, if you have a singular feminine noun and you want to say the same thing, limpio, to describe your molar or la muela, you could tell la muela is a singular noun and it's also feminine because it ends in an A. So how do we change our male adjective limpio into something that fits a feminine noun like muela? Well, we just changed the O to an A and now it's muela limpia. Okay. And we have a lot of adjectives here for you on this page. They're mostly, obviously it's hard to memorize a lot of them, but we have some very important ones for you here to remember. And these are used just in the way we described on the previous slide. They come after the nouns that they're describing. We have a lot of descriptors for pain, including painful or doloroso, sensitive, which isn't sensitivo. Sensitivo means like you are emotionally sensitive, almost. Sensible is sensitive in Spanish for this type of sensation. Numb, entumecido, dull, embotado, sharp, filoso. And then sporadic is very similar in Spanish, esporádico. Constant, constante, very similar. Radiating is esparce. Localized is localizado. General is general. So localizado and general are very similar to their English counterparts. We have some descriptors for other things.
How do we confirm if they paid?
Wait, I think my question got skipped.
Oh.
I asked if how do we get patients? Is it only can we only get our patients from CBC or our CPC team?
Is this a Spanish-related question? I think one of you doesn't have your mic off. Let me go ahead and there you go. Okay, so I was like, that doesn't sound like a Spanish question. But yes, you only get your patients from your CPC, for those of you that don't know, unless you green slip a patient. But anyway, moving on to the Spanish again. If you wanted to say decayed, you think picado. Pica means like take a bite out of. So if it's decayed and missing tooth structure, it's picado. Carious is cariado, which has the first part of carious in it, caria. Swollen is hinchado. Infected, infectado. Loose, flojo or suelto. I would say flojo more, but suelto means more like, I would say slipping, almost like it's about to come off type of thing, versus, I don't know, they're slightly different, but I hear flojo more often. Strong is fuerte. Dry is seco. And two colors for you: white, healthy tooth structure would be blanco, and maybe not as attractive tooth structure would be brown or moreno. And we have some bonus words for you on the left. Okay, now here comes the practice part. So I know these are a lot of new words, so we've included a word bank for you guys, but it'd be great if we could get a couple people to volunteer for maybe a few of these. So if we were to say a strong material, how would you say strong material in Spanish?
El material fuerte.
El material fuerte. So adjectives always come after their nouns. So remember, it's flipped. It's the opposite of English. Very good, guys. Okay, now we have decayed molar. So how would we say decayed molar? Think about the gender, if it's plural or not.
La muela picada.
See, yep. La muela picada. So it's not picado because picado is going to be male. So la muela picada. And that's perfect. Two more. Who wants to do the next one? Sensitive tooth.
Diente sensible.
Yep, perfect. Okay, and then sharp or dull pain. This one's extra credit because there's two. And or is o in Spanish. Very easy to remember. So would you say, oh, go ahead, sorry, I cut you off.
No worries, el dolor felizo o imputado.
Yep, perfect, yeah. So you'd say, basically, if you were to translate it directly to English, it'd be the pain, sharp or dull. So yeah, you had it perfectly there. And of course, these are just like a starting point for you guys to like get exposed to vocabulary, but there's obviously an infinite number of ways to describe pain. So probably when you're talking to your patient and they say a word that you don't understand, you just might ask them using the words that you know, do you mean the pain is sharp? Do you mean it's dull? Because they'll understand you and they'll be able to say no or yes. And the full sentences are, vamos a usar un material fuerte. So that's using our vamos a blank form that we used week 1 or lesson 1. La muela picada necesita un relleno, which is relleno. If you've ever eaten a chile relleno, you know it's a stuffed chili. So think of stuffing the chili as a filling. You're filling that chili up. You also fill the teeth. It's relleno. Vamos a tomar un radiografía del diente sensible. And one thing to note here is you see del, and you might not know what that is. So just take it as del is a combination of de and el. So when you want to say el diente, the tooth, but you have a de, which is a word we'll learn later on. Instead of saying de el diente, it sounds very choppy like that. So in Spanish, they combine it and those two words become del. And tiene dolor filoso o embotado. Okay, so that was a lot of adjectives there. If you ever forget how to say a noun or anything like that, we have a cheat sheet here for you guys. In Spanish, if you want to say thing, it's la cosa. Cosa is thing, and it's a feminine noun. And say you forget the word for for something, you can point to it and say or esta cosa to say this thing. So I would say la cosa is a very commonly, like, you'll have people that speak fluent Spanish, and even for commonplace things that they definitely know the word for, they'll just say esta cosa. So you can just point to something and say esta cosa te duele, or things like that if you don't remember the specific name for something. Along with thing, this and these are also very helpful words, because maybe you remember the name of the noun, but you don't know how to describe where it is in the mouth. You have 32 teeth. So how do you describe which tooth it is, especially if patients may not know the name of each type of tooth? Like, they don't know it's number 31 or anything like that. So you can just point and say este diente. So this and these, that's singular, plural, and there's male, female, este, esta, and estos, estas. And if you want to say here, here is aquí in Spanish. So we have the example, ¿Qué es esta cosa aquí? What is this thing here? And one quick thing to remember, there's other words for saying that and those, and they sound very similar to este, esta, estos, estas. Those words are eso and esa. And the way you know you could differentiate between these two is think that there's a T in the word este and esta. T is for touch. So you use este, esta, estos, and estas for things that are close enough for you to touch, versus those other words, they don't have a T in them. They're just eso, esa. They're over there, they're farther away. And we won't use that as much in dental Spanish, because we're talking about things that are in the mouth and in the face and very close by. Another nice thing about these and this, or este, esta, estos, estas, is that you can, like I said, you can use that with nouns that you do know, just to point to specifically which noun you're talking about. But yeah, these teeth are white. Estos dientes son blancos. Okay, more ways to describe things. So we have adjectives. We have a cheat way of trying to describe what noun you're using by using este, esta, or la cosa. You can also obviously use verbs to describe things. And in English, it would be like saying, I am blank. That's what estar and ser are. They are saying something is, something has a certain quality. The difference between these two is estar would be more for states of being that are temporary, like when something is infected, it's probably not going to be infected forever. So estar would be the more appropriate verb to use for this, versus ser is kind of like something that's inherent to that being, or a more permanent state of being, like, what is your career? Well, I'm going to be a dentist, and hopefully that doesn't change, but that's what you'd use ser for, more so. Tener is another way of describing things. There's some almost symptoms, states of being that are described not by adjectives, but someone possessing that state. Like if you're thirsty, you can say you have thirst, and that would be tener sed. If you have a fear of something, or if you're afraid, that's also, you would say tener miedo. There are certain states of being and certain like qualities that are described by tener. So like to have fear, to be careful, to have a fever, to have pain. You could say someone's feverish, and that would be an adjective, but in this case, also Spanish, you could say you have a fever, and that would be with the verb tener. And as you can see from these tables, there's a lot of conjugations of this that we've included. I would mostly pay attention to the yo and el, e, o, usted versions of it, because these are very commonly used words, but they are irregular, so they're a little bit harder to memorize. So if you need to narrow it down for yourself, remember estar would be estoy and está in present tense. Ser would be soy and es in present tense, and tener would be tengo and tiene. And we'll go over more irregular rules a little bit later on, but these are extremely irregular, so take little steps at a time. Okay, so some more practice with this. So we'll flip between these slides. So if you say, I need to clean the carries, if anyone remembers tener, the present tense, if they want to take a stab at this, I know this might be a little bit more intermediate Spanish for some of you. Anyone want to take a stab?
Tengo que limpiar las caries y poner una corona en el diente. And what's the word for infected?
Infectado.
Infectado.
Yeah, very good. I mean, you got tengo, and that's not a very intuitive thing to conjugate, and especially because we practiced conjugation last time, so that one's a little bit harder. I guess this one, I'll make it a little bit easier for you on the second one. We're asking for what verb you would use to describe something being painful. Would that be ser or estar, if anyone wants to answer that? State of being painful, is it permanent or something that is not permanent?
Estar.
It would be estar. So in this case, the conjugation would be está with the accent above the A. So está doloroso. Very good. Okay, and maybe
quick question. So you were saying, so está is like something that is not permanent, and then what's the more permanent?
Ser is more permanent.
Okay.
And it's funny because you'll see a lot of sentences. We'll be speaking mostly in the third person el, e, o, usted. So you'll see es a lot. And I mean, when I was learning Spanish at a young age, es just sounded like is. And it's kind of like a literal translation of is, just for the third person. So the tooth is like painful. Es, or the tooth, not painful because that's transient. She is a professor. Ella es una profesora. That's my way of remembering it. I don't know if that helps. Okay, but yeah, so one is more permanent and one is more transient. And if anyone remembers their colors, how would you describe brown stain and white filling? And we have the words there for you. You just need to fill in the actual adjective.
So for brown, would it be moreno?
Moreno, yeah, moreno. La mancha morena. Well, it would be morena in this case because mancha is feminine. So la mancha morena.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then for filling, it would be blanco because filling is relleno, right?
Yeah, it is. So I guess let's break down the sentence because it's a little long. So voy a eliminar la mancha moreno or morena en su diente y reemplazarlo con una relleno blanco. So voy a is our, again, I'm going to do something. And then the second verb, eliminar, is not conjugated. And that's basically saying I'm going to eliminate. And then la mancha is stain. And then brown, morena, would come after as the adjective. And then en su diente would be on your tooth. Y reemplazarlo would be almost like reestablish, put it back. And lo is added onto that verb. And it means it. That's something we'll go over way later in like, I think lesson 4 or 5. And con un relleno blanco. Con is like, think of chile con carne, like chili with meat. That's what con is. Con is with, and the rest you guys know. Relleno is like chile relleno. I have a lot of food analogies, I guess, with Spanish. Very good, guys. Okay, Roxy, this is your port.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Roxana, and we'll continue with phrases or conversation phrases. So it's gonna start picking up a little, but we'll start with something simple, right? So we're gonna start with basics like introducing yourself. Just hello, hola. My name is, mi nombre es. I am a student, soy un estudiante o una estudiante. I am a dentist, soy dentista, or you could also say soy un dentista, but it's a little implied there. And then I am a student or a dental student, you can say soy un estudiante dental. School of Dentistry translates to Escuela de Odontología. I am from the US. Yo soy de los Estados Unidos. I live in Westwood. Vivo en Westwood. So these are just phrases that you can start practicing with your patients. Very simple, but always good to know. And then, yes, we can move on to the next slide. And here are some more phrases for you to get to know your patient and get the conversation started. We have a few charts here. The one on the bottom talks about how to start your questions. So who will be quién, what will be qué, which, cuál, where, dónde, when, cuándo, why, por qué, o para qué. How is cómo, and how many, cuánto, cuánta, or it could also be in plural form like cuántos or cuántas. So like cuánto, you could say cuántos años tiene. That would be the plural form. And for the most part, they're very similar to the use that we have in English. So they're used similarly. Que or what, que is I would say the most common one. It's interchangeable sometimes with which. So sometimes you'll see that some words in Spanish, you could phrase your sentences with either que or cuál. Sometimes cuál sounds a little bit more formal, but either way, it's okay to go with either or. You're never going to go wrong with que. I think it's the most commonly used one. And then I'll read over some of the examples. We have, what is your name? ¿Cuál es su nombre? How old are you? ¿Cuántos años tiene? How are you? ¿Cómo está? What is your job? ¿Cuál es su trabajo? Where are you from? ¿De dónde es? And where do you live? ¿Dónde vive? And we can see on the top, the top chart, we see possessive adjectives. So these are very useful. And since this is our adjectives lesson, as you saw in the beginning from Stephanie, the adjectives usually match the nouns number and gender. So it applies for this possessive adjectives. They're usually indicating belongings. So for example, if you want to say my tooth, you can say mi diente. And if you want to transfer that to the plural form, you would say mis dientes, adding the S at the end. And then we can move on. Some more phrases for conversation. These are not necessarily dental terms, but I think they're all very, very useful on your day-to-day conversations. And they are, what a pleasure to see you again. Qué gusto verlo otra vez. O qué gusto verla otra vez. have a good day. Que le vaya bien. This is not maybe not a literal translation, but it's most widely used like that, because if we were to try to translate have a good day exactly, it would maybe sound a little off. Don't worry, no se preocupe. Do you understand? Entiende o comprende. I understand. Le entiendo. Do you have questions? ¿Tiene preguntas? And then the last ones are, I'm sure most of you should know them. I'm sorry, lo siento. Please is por favor. Thank you, gracias, and you're welcome. De nada. Now we're going to have a little practice exercise. So we're going to pretend that we're in the elevator, and if I could get 1 or 2 volunteers to be the student, dentist, and the patient, so that we can read over this little dialogue. Anyone?
Vivo
Are you
en
waiting for
Los
people?
Ángeles. ¿Dónde vive usted?
Good pronunciation. Yep, I live in Los Angeles. Where do you live? Who wants to be the patient?
Yo vivo en el centro de Los Angeles. I know I'm not saying that right.
Los Angeles. Yeah, the G is just a H
Los
sound.
Angeles. Okay.
Yeah. You got it. Okay, next one.
Yeah, who was the patient, the student?
¿Cuál es su trabajo?
Good. Literally, it says which one is your job, but translates to what is your job. Last one.
Soy una doctora.
Great. Yep, you guys got it. I guess trick question. What would you say if you were a male doctor?
Soy un doctor.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
Very
I guess
good.
it's important to note that not all professions change from male to female. Dentista is dentista. It will just stay that way. But doctora, doctor, change.
So now we're going to move on to payments, since usually patients have a lot of questions regarding this. We have how much, cuánto. Cost is costar, is a verb, and pay is pagar. Dollar, el dólar. Credit or debit card, you can say la tarjeta de crédito o la tarjeta de débito. Check is el cheque. Money, el dinero. Insurance, el seguro. Fee is el costo o el precio. And some adjectives to follow along with the theme of our presentation are expensive, means caro. Cheap is barato. And free is gratis.
Yeah, I guess some notes on this to make it easy to remember. Insurance, seguro, means like, think of secure in English. Seguro. It means to be, it literally translates in Spanish too to mean to be sure of something, seguro. So think of insuring yourself to be sure that you have something to pay for your treatment with. Fee, precio kind of translates to price. Costo is cost. And gratis, for free, you can think of gratuity.
Yeah. And luckily, a lot of the words are similar, like check and cheque. They're a little similar, so hopefully you guys can remember it by that. Now we're going to have another exercise. If we can have someone volunteer, it's okay if you don't know how to translate the entire sentence, but maybe just the bolded words. So, how much does a cleaning cost? Anyone knows the translation?
¿Cuánto es el precio de la limpieza?
Okay,
Very good.
that's good. Good. It will cost you $68.
So this is definitely a recap from last week if anyone remembers how to say numbers. And $68 is if you are shy and are new to Spanish, that's what we're asking for.
Is it 68?
68, okay. And what's dollars? How would you say dollars, plural?
Los dólares.
Dólares, yeah. So there's an accent on the O, dólares.
Okay. The next one is please pay over the phone with a credit card. So anyone remembers how to say pay in Spanish?
Por favor, pagar, I don't know, over el teléfono con un tarjeta de crédito.
Tarjeta de crédito, yeah.
Tarjeta de crédito.
Yeah.
So
You could say por. So por favor, if you say pagar, definitely they'll understand you. But a little bit more intermediate level, if you conjugate the verb, it would be por favor pague por teléfono. So you could say por, and then we'll go over some of those prepositions later on.
hold on one second, I accidentally stopped screen sharing.
Just a quick question for that one. Since it's please pay over the phone, if it's referring to someone, so it's like a person is you, why isn't it pagas?
That would be a tú. We are trying to eliminate some of the memorization by just going over formal Spanish. So usted would be paga.
Okay, thank you.
And if you were to do the command form of this, it would be pague, yeah. And I guess one thing to note is I believe it's spelled Pague because you can't have a E after something like a G without a U after it. I think that's a rule for Q and G specifically. It's still pronounced the same though. That's the nice thing. Okay, and one last one, because the very last sentence on this is just a reference for the dental students on how to say this. But how would you say dental insurance?
El seguro dental.
Yep, perfect. Okay. So these are the answers. Do you want to quickly read them, Roxy?
Yes. So, ¿cuánto cuesta una limpieza? Le va a costar $68. Por favor, paga por teléfono con una tarjeta de crédito. ¿Acepta seguro dental? Sí, aceptamos Delta Dental y Dentical.
Yeah, and the reason why we didn't want you guys to conjugate like how much something costs. Cost is a irregular verb when it comes to conjugation. It's a stem change, which is something we'll go over later. For the second sentence, it sounds like a lot, but it's basically that voy a blank, except with a third person. Va a blank is the version of that. So that's what that is. But yeah, moving on. If those seem very like weird and out of the ordinary to you, that's what those are.
Okay, now we have 3 more sentences that would like to see if anyone can translate to English this time. So the first one is, ¿cuál es el costo de una corona de oro?
And these have definite words that we haven't taught you guys, but let's see if we can use context clues to put it together.
How much does a gold crown cost?
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. Perfect. If anyone is struggling with that, ¿cuál is basically how much, and then es el costo is the cost, de una corona of a crown, de oro is of gold. We say crown of gold in Spanish. Instead of, it's important to distinguish from an adjective. Oro is not an adjective, it's another noun. It's a material. So you don't say corona oro because that's just smashing two nouns together. You'd have to say corona de means of, corona de oro to say gold crown.
The next one is, está caro. ¿Puedo pagar con una tarjeta de crédito?
It's expensive. Can you pay with a credit card?
Perfect.
Very good. And la escuela de odontología tiene precios reducidos.
The dental school has reduced prices.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are all good examples on how in Spanish we'll say the adjective after the noun. And also very useful phrases in the clinic.
Okay, directions and places. So if you know or don't know, preposition is basically just a word that's used to describe the location of a noun, and that can be the physical location or like the time-wise location of that noun. We've bolded the ones that we'll talk about most in this lecture, and they're mostly physical locations. But some very commonly used ones are also on the left. You have two and also many more definitions, which is a. For or in order to is para and por. We might do a lesson later on about distinguishing between these two. They can describe a lot of things like goals or motivations, places you're going, things like that. In, on, and at. En is used to describe that. I would say it's most commonly in. So in and en are the same thing. Of is also used a lot. It's de. So corona de oro, a crown of gold. Two more would be with, which is con, which is that chile con carne that I talked about. Con is with, and without is sin. And then some more location ones. We have between, entre, so like between two teeth, entre dos dientes. Sobre is something in the area or surrounding, engulfing something. It has a kind of a lot of different definitions, but you just think something that is almost everywhere in that area. Next to is al lado de. Lado in Spanish means side, so you can kind of think of this meaning it's by the side of something or right next to its side. Underneath is debajo de. In front is delante de. Behind is detrás de. Across is enfrente de. And close is cerca de. And de it means of, and so you kind of add it on to these little phrases when you're trying to say, like, for example, if you want to say next to the tooth, you say al lado de diente or del diente, which is the tooth comes after de because you're kind of describing the side of, which is the de, the connecting word, and then the noun, if that makes sense to you guys. Some more vocab to know. So again, where is donde in Spanish? If you want to say left, and it can be both a noun and an adjective, but we use it mostly as an adjective here. It's izquierda. It's a really weird word. Think of the fact that most people are right-handed, so if you're left-handed, you're kind of unique, just like this word, izquierda. Right is derecha. Side is lado or el lado, which I just described. And then using our words from the previous side, there's very similar ways we describe the teeth. So front teeth would be los dientes de enfrente. So the teeth of the front. So de, again, it means of. Back teeth would be los dientes de atrás. Upper teeth would be los dientes de arriba. And lower teeth would be los dientes de abajo. And from slide 6, if you remember our little cheat slide on using la cosa or este, esta, if you wanted to maybe skip using all these prepositions, like saying los dientes enfrente, you could say estos dientes aquí. Yeah, and that's how you would use that to get out of remembering these. If you're not for some reason remembering them in the heat of the moment, it's okay. Okay. So cover your eyes on the right side of the screen, I guess. How would you say the upper teeth or the lower teeth? And there's also like a fun song that describes dancing. Like, I can't remember what it was. I think it was, I can't remember right now. Anyway, someone want to volunteer for these? Upper teeth, lower teeth. Or you could just read off the side. Boom, boom, boom.
Los dientes de arriba
Mhm.
y los dientes de abajo.
Yep, okay, you got it. Yeah, great. Okay, tooth behind, the one with the gold crown. So behind. Does anyone want to volunteer to say that sentence?
Detrás de.
Yes, detrás de. And the reason why here it's del is that when we have de and el, like el diente, next to each other, we have to put together those words, and de el becomes del. So es el diente que está detrás del diente que tiene la corona de oro. Okay, and how would you say next to that tooth? That's a longer phrase that combines prepositions and then our este, esta concept.
También le duele el diente al lado de este diente. I actually have a question on this one. How do you know where to put the también? Like, can you also say le duele también el diente?
The only rule that I know is you can't put también at the end of a sentence. I think it can go in a different place. Do you have any input on that, Roxy? I see it usually at the beginning of the sentence.
Yeah, I don't think there's any rule, to be honest. You could use it at the end too. Like, ¿le duele este diente también? Like, you could say that.
Huh. Fernanda, for some reason, told me that you can't put it at the end of the sentence. Yeah, but I don't know.
Maybe it sounds a little weird, but it's I feel like it doesn't. There's no rule.
I think mostly if you place it at different parts of the sentence, it'll just change the emphasis.
Yeah,
Like,
usually, like, since también has the little accent on the E, and you could use it to kind of like emphasize your question. Like if you say también or le duele también, it's like it kind of gives it like the interrogation like accent. So I think you could put it anywhere. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think if you say, I don't know, if I put it after le duele también, I feel like that focuses more on you have another pain versus like if you put it closer to the el diente, it would be more focused on there's another tooth with pain versus there's another pain, if that makes sense. It just kind of changes it just a tiny bit, but I think anyone would understand you wherever you put it. Kind of like as a floating word, I feel like. But yeah, so I remember the song I was thinking of. Roxy, have you heard the song Bomba?
Yes.
Yeah, and okay, it's just like, if you guys look it up, I don't want to bring it up because it's like slightly a ratchet song, but it just talks about people like dancing, going to the ceiling, de arriba, and de abajo, going to the closer to the floor. If that helps you remember it all, but it's a really funny song. They play it at all the weddings. And these are very long sentences. These are more for your reference on showing you that the prepositions are not only used for locations in the mouth when you're trying to figure out with the patient which tooth you're working on or which tooth is bothering them or something that's going on in their mouth. You can also use it to describe to them how to get to our clinic and where they are, because oftentimes patients will be lost. So we've bolded kind of like the prepositions that we've covered that would make sense for this. So if you wanted to say we're on the right side of the street, you'd say estamos en el lado, the side. Derecho, right, is being used as an adjective here, so it comes after the side. Del calle. And if you want to say we're in front of the Ralphs or across from the Ralphs on the other side of the street, you'd say estamos en frente de Ralph's supermercado. And if you want to tell the patient to wait for you at the entrance of the clinic, you'd say, por favor, espérame delante de la entrada de la clínica. And yeah, that's our address of our clinic too. But those are more reference slides for you guys to show you that these words can be used in many situations. Okay, and Roxy, this is you.
Okay. I just get a question, but it's a good one. They're asking if there's if there's estes, there's just estos, and yeah, for some reason estos it'll be estos for masculine and estas for feminine. Yeah, but there's no estes. There's este for just one singular noun. But if you're going to move on to plural, you just say estos. There's no estes. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, it is weird, but does that make sense? Or okay, yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll move on with other words to use on the phone. Calling, the verb calling is llamar. The noun call is la llamada. Busy means ocupado o ocupada. Free is libre. One moment, un momento. And correcto. I know before we said free is gratis when you're talking about payments. It could also, when you're talking about being available, you could say libre. And then some phrases that we have over here are, I left a message. Dejé un mensaje. Can I speak with blank? Puedo hablar con. My phone number is. Mi número de teléfono es. Please repeat it more slowly. Por favor, repítalo más despacio. Spell it for me, please. Deletréamelo, por favor. I know that one's a little tongue twister, but deletréamelo, por favor. Do you have questions? ¿Tiene preguntas? I need to cancel the appointment. Necesito cancelar la cita. And then some other scenarios we have, especially now because of COVID, a lot of new things to tell our patients about coming to the clinic. These are certainly more advanced sentences, but these are always good for you guys to have as reference. The cleaning will be $68 and your patient number is, and then la limpieza será $68 y su número de paciente es. Call the phone number to make your credit card payment over the phone. Llame al 310-825-5253 para pagar con su tarjeta de crédito, por favor, or por teléfono, sorry. So this is like if you're telling your patient to please call to make the payments over the phone, which is something we're encouraging now because of COVID. And then you can't enter the building from the A-level entrance. No puede entrar por la entrada en el piso A. Companions are not allowed to your appointment. No se permiten acompañantes a su cita. Please wear a face mask. Por favor, use una mascarilla. Call me when you have arrived at the UCLA clinic entrance. Llámame cuando llegue a la entrada de la clínica de UCLA.
I've heard mask as just mascara too. Oh, okay. So that's awesome.
Yeah, máscara or mascarilla. Yeah.
I have a question. For that last sentence, it says llámame cuando llegue. Do you know why it's conjugated as llegue? And is that the subjunctive or is that?
That's the formal, it's the formal, the usted form of like cuando usted llegue.
But isn't it llegar with an AR?
Yes, that is the stem form of the verb. But once we conjugate to usted, is llegue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you could also say, oh, I feel like I'm trying to think of maybe a simpler sentence or a simpler way to say it, but yeah. Llegar would be the verb like to arrive. But in Spanish we have to change, so we only keep part of the stem and then we have to change it to llegue. Maybe we can, if we have some time at the end, we can practice the conjugation.
Yeah, this slide definitely has a little bit more complex language and combinations of different conjugations. So it gets a little confusing, especially because we're still kind of in the beginning parts of our lessons where we're trying to slowly ease you in, but we'll make it more difficult and go over conjugations. Probably starting lesson 3, where we're really going to make you guys work for the conjugations.
Okay, one more slide. This one is putting everything together. This is definitely something that you will be using in the clinic. So hi, my name is, and I am a dental student at UCLA. Hola, mi nombre es, y soy un o una estudiante dental de UCLA. May I speak to? ¿Puedo hablar con, por favor? Mrs. Martinez, I'm calling you to make an appointment for a dental cleaning. Señora Martínez, le llamo para hacer una cita para su limpieza dental. Without insurance, it costs $68. Sin seguro, cuesta $68. I'm free on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 in the afternoon. When can you come in? Estoy libre los martes y jueves a las 2 de la tarde. ¿Cuándo puede venir? Okay, we have an appointment on the 19th of May at 2 p.m. Bueno, tenemos una cita el 19 de mayo a las 2 de la tarde. We're near parking lot 2. Take a turn onto Tiverton. Estamos cerca del estacionamiento 2. Da una vuelta en Tiverton. Thank you. Have a good day. Gracias. Que le vaya bien.
Yeah, and that would mostly go over things that you would talk about in a single call. And I guess too, for dental students, if you have a patient that speaks Spanish and you need to ask them the COVID questions, on Axiom, if you go to forms, instead of adding the regular COVID form, they have a Spanish version of it, and it has all the questions there already translated. So you just need to read them to your patient and ask them if it's yes or no. But yeah. We have a lot of sample situations for you guys that have been made. They're a little bit more complex sentences, but if you wanted to study up a little bit more or see how these things would go in real life, these are for you to reference. And the last thing we have at the end of these slides are some of the more common irregular verbs. Like we talked about estar, ser, and tener today. We have all the conjugations for you here if you wanted to refresh on them. And we have some other ones like ir, poder, dar. These are the more common ones that would be used in dentistry that are very irregular, especially ir. But that's all we have today. And if you haven't yet, let's see, the form is right here. Let me post it. And that's it. Oh, sorry, Gina, I responded the wrong thing to you. I couldn't see the chats while in presenter mode, guys. Sorry about that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.